Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting with the Virtual Tasting Society. I am Vadim Perlovsky, and I'm excited to welcome back our good friend Daniel Crowell from the Glenmorangie Company. He is the national brand ambassador. If you don't know who he is, you should. He is Glenmodan. Recently, a master of whiskey, master of Scotch with the Scotch Masters Society.
Right. Council of Whiskey Masters. It's a four level set of exams, and I was fortunate enough to pass level four in April as one of the first six to sit for and pass that exam. It was horrifying, and I'm glad it's over.
And congratulations from all of us here. One of
Thank
our
you.
good members, Siddharth, was in that class with you, and
Indeed, he was.
nothing but good things. And so we're excited to have you on as always. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to join us and share some whiskey with us and share some of your in-depth knowledge on all things whiskey and definitely Glenmorangie. We
Excellent.
have an exciting lineup of six expressions in front of us, and I think we haven't tasted any of these except the 18. So I'm stoked. Do you want to tell us what order we should line them up in so we can have?
I think starting with the original 12 year, I think makes a lot of sense. Then I think we move into maybe Calvados cask 12 year, then the two tails. Oh, sorry, hang on. Let's start with the Glenmorangie original 12 year. We'll move to triple cask reserve,
Okay.
then to Calvados cask 12 year, tail of Tokyo, tail of this most recent one, tail of ice cream, and we'll finish with the 18-year extremely rare.
Perfect. Thank you.
A cat has decided to join us, so we have one more among us.
What should we call your cat?
His name is Arthur. You're welcome to call him whatever you'd like. Um, but his technical name is Arthur.
Arthur. Welcome, Arthur. Thank you for joining us.
I'll let him know. He's just out of camera view and deciding he wants to drink as many whiskeys as he can get his hands on, or create whatever havoc he can. Okay. Okay, good. So yeah, thank you all for your time, your interest in these six Glenmorangies. It's a pleasure to be back with you, Vadim, and Virtual Tasting Society. As you'd mentioned, Siddharth has become a good friend. It was great to go through what was a fairly harrowing experience with him. I had sat on the judging panel for his Master Scotch exam, which he passed with flying colors, and then we happened to find ourselves together in the Master Whiskey Candidates back in April. So he's a terrific fellow, a wealth of knowledge, obviously, a terrific palate as well. And I'm glad that you are familiar with him, and I'm glad he's familiar with all of you. So let me make sure that I can see the chats, and I can. That's fantastic. Please feel free if you'd like to drop any questions that you feel like dropping into the chat, or throw up a hand, or just start saying things, and we'll do our best to sort of address what it is that you would like to know a little bit more about, along with your insights on these whiskeys are extremely valuable to me and to the brand. So please feel free to sprinkle them liberally throughout the experience. So we'll start here. And the reason is Vadim and I talked about this a bit, and one of the reasons we wanted to put this lineup together was that it represents some very interesting developments in the ongoing evolution of Glenmorangie. We are approaching, geez, where are we now? Year 182 that we're coming up on. And one of the things that you can do when you're 182 years old is you can begin to phone it in if you'd like. I don't think anybody would have a giant problem with that and rest on one's laurels. But we certainly have absolutely no interest in that at the Glenmorangie Company. We do pay a lot of attention to our own history and our own legacy, but you can spend too much time focused on those things. And in the process of doing so, you can find yourself in a garden of stagnation by doing too much of that. So, with our master distiller, Dr. Bill Lumsden, at the helm, we're really never going to fall into that trap of being more interested in our past than we are in our future. And as that is the case, one of those things that I always kind of felt was going to be an untouchable was the concept of Glenmorangie's flagship expression, the original, being bottled at 10 years old. I thought that that would be the case moving forward in ad infinitum, and it isn't. That changed very recently. The Glenmorangie 10-year-old original expression has gone to a 12-year. Of course, you will all be the judges of whether you feel that that was a good move for us. If you prefer the product, if you prefer the 10-year, that is entirely your realm, of course. We felt as though it was time to look very seriously at the fundamental aspects of who we are and ask ourselves if there was anything that we could do to incite improvement on what we felt was a thing we had really arrived at, a very, very lovely product which we had been bottling for close to 70 years, the flagship expression of Glenmorangie as a 10-year-old expression. So we'll start with the 12, and we'll certainly, if you've got observations, those of you who are devotees of Glenmorangie Original, I'm vitally interested to see what you think about what we've done to our beloved original. Now, as observers of the category, yeah, is anybody doing the 10 and the 12 side by side? Let me know. And again, inject your insights at will. We did not change the bottling ABV. It's still 43, which is unique to here. In most places, Glenmorangie Original, whether it was the 10 or the 12, is bottled at 40 ABV, certainly in the UK and other parts of the world. But here in the US, we get it at 43. Not much has changed here in terms of cask makeup. This is all ex-bourbon oak. It is all a combination of first and second fill ex-bourbon oak only. No use of casks that have been used more times than bourbon us in the creation of original. Now, it used to be with the 10-year version that the ratio of first to second fill was about 60-40, 60% first fill, 40% second fill. My feeling is, and Bill has alluded to it, that that ratio is no longer exactly accurate. It never was exactly accurate, but I think that that relationship between first and second fill was looked at a bit and possibly adjusted slightly in order to get here to original 12. Again, a load of those classic Glenmorangie markers, citrus characteristics, lavender, honey, malty, biscuity notes. Certainly a lot of American oak influence as well, cinnamon, vanilla, cake spices, all those lovely things will drop a little onto the palate. This is neat so far. I haven't cut it with any water at all. If you'd like to, obviously, you are at your leisure to enjoy any of these whiskeys any way that you'd like.
I will say it smells as lovely as ever.
I'm a big, big fan of what we've done. Now, this got looked at by not just Bill, but by a number of different sensory panels within the company before we even began to seriously consider that it would become the flagship expression for the brand. So one of the things that Bill walked into this idea with was a certain skepticism that there would be a preference for anything other than the 10-year, which we had been producing again for a good 70 years. He was surprised to find that the strong percentage of the sensory panels within the company expressed a preference for the 12-year over the 10. Now, we didn't just do this to sort of join the dirty dozen our major competitors, their flagship expression tends to be a 12-year. And if it was just so that we could join the 12-year club, we would have and could have done that many, many, many years ago. The fact that it happened now, it leans a lot into a look at what's next and an avoidance of the idea that there's anything sacrosanct about what it is that we do at Glenmorangie, other than put the best possible whiskey that we can into the bottle. Everything else is on the table in terms of the incremental evolution of what Glenmorangie is over the course of the what we hope to be the hundreds and hundreds of years of its existence. I'm just going to drop a touch of water in here just to see what happens. It's just a couple of drops. Some nice, interesting things jumping out of the glass at this point. A little bit more dusty, fruity note, a little bit more almost a kind of some white wine characteristics that are also all of a sudden kind of much more present than they were. There's that apricot note that I tend to look for. Really nice spiciness. A slightly enhanced creaminess. And it's a little bit more, I tend to find that as Glenmorangie gets older, it gets more patient, as is the case with most of us. This idea that our younger expressions are more robust, more explosive on the palate, more sort of vivacious. As slightly incrementally more time goes by, they become a little bit more patient in terms of the pacing of the storytelling that expression's trying to communicate on the nose and palate. And I think that's the case here too. Any thoughts? I'm checking the let me just see what's going on there. I've got to jump through my butt a little bit to try to see some of these. Let me get rid of this. Dismiss. Yes. So the answer to is the 10-year going away for good? Yes. This will be a 12-year expression moving forward. Get rid of this screen as well and that one so that I can see what's going on. Any thoughts? Anybody have any uh, observations for the good of the cause?
It's been a while since I have the 10, but it's feeling more waxy and definitely more complex.
I like that. I like that term waxy. I think that there's a little bit more palate weight, a little bit more creaminess.
Dan, did the decision to go from the 10 to the 12, was that a marketing thing or more maybe having to do with the availability of stocks?
I think it was, I think there were two factors at work there. One of them was a blanket curiosity that Bill and the Whiskey Creation team sort of hatched over the course of a little bit of time. And as I'm sure that you all, as observers of the category, are aware, the category is currently in decline in terms of global consumption rates, which means, honestly, it sounds like a negative, and in some ways it is, but in other ways, it means that we have older stock to play with. And so we can do these kinds of things and experiment in ways that we may not have been able to in the past because of the demand curve that we needed to meet. As that relaxes a bit, and I think around the category, around the industry, you may see some things happen at distilleries across Scotland where they begin to mess with their fermentation times and maybe their cut points and maybe their stock profile that they put in a bottle. Maybe not just a return to more frequent age statements, but a proliferation of older age statements, which you can be the judge of whether that's a net positive or not. It will depend to a degree on the product quality and the price to quality ratio. That happens as the result of the next phase of the evolution of the category of single malt Scotch whiskey in general. But there's no denying it's going to be an interesting time to see where the industry goes in the next 2 to 5 years, and of course beyond. But looking at it statistically, we've been in a growth pattern in single malt for over 20 years. Folks had their entire careers within a growth curve in this industry. And this is the first time that we've been looking at a different reality. And a lot of that, it comes down to, for us, it comes down to, all right, we're going to have to try to leverage the positive elements of that in terms of expanded experimentation and doing things like looking at shaking the foundations of what it is that we do by putting original up as a 12-year-old expression, and to do communication. This being one prime example. These are the kinds of things that I think that the more that the single malt, well, Scotch whiskey industry in general, but the single malt segment of it recommits itself to having substantive conversations about what it is that's in the bottle and what our consumers and potential consumers can expect from us, can rely on from us, and how they can best relate to it in a way that's resonant and meaningful to them. You can't really do that in a print ad. You can't really do as well as you can talking to people and having these kinds of experiences, whether they're in real time in 3 dimensions or in 2 dimensions virtually. I think they are exceedingly important to securing the future of the category, sure, but also exceedingly important in continuing the work of showing a broader and broader community consumer base that this is more than just a convenient inebriative. It is a culture. It is an entire culture's life story in a glass that is being delivered to you through the narrative voice that you already have. So somebody else's story told to you in your voice makes it your story too. The communicative and the connective aspect of this style of drinking, I think, makes it a much different proposition. And I think we need to recommit ourselves to making sure people know what the potentials are and what the opportunity is. And so, Vadim, what you've built here, everybody who's on the call and everybody who's involved with Virtual Tasting Society, you all are exceedingly important in terms of how we navigate the future of the category of single malt Scotch whiskey. Not just because, gee, we wish you'd buy more. That's not really the point at all. To me, it's not that I don't give a damn. I want to make sure that what's in your glass makes you as happy as possible, given what it is that you know about what's in the glass, what you're being told about the background of it, about the production aspects of it, about the history of the distillery, the history of the category, the history of that part of Scotland where that whiskey came from. All of those things, we owe clarity. We owe a clear and clearly stated intent and purpose, and a wide open door into the category for anyone who is interested in having their repertoire of beverage alcohol intake be more varied, more complex, more interesting, more engaging, more rife with stories and connectivity to other people that you may meet at some point, you may not. Certainly, this is a distillate created from a culture that has had many, 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 many generations of Scots persons involved in the production of it. So all their stories are here in the glass, all of them, the ones that have passed on, the ones that are just brand new in the industry, they're all here, just sort of waiting to have to share themselves and their stories and their culture and their struggles and their histories and their triumphs with you. So as long as you still got a little bit of the original 12 for fun, we're going to pour up a little bit of Triple Cask Reserve, which is one of our new additions to the core range. So this is going to be around all the time. This is not a limited edition item. This will be available in broad market availability, bottled at 40 ABV. Now you will find some of the core elements of the Glenmorangie style here. Ex-bourbon oak certainly plays a significant role in what's happening here in the glass of Triple Cask Reserve. So ex-bourbon oak is one of the three casks that we're alluding to through the title that we've chosen for this whiskey. We're also messing around with going back to, this is pre-Tale of series, going back to the private editions. If you go clear back to Glenmorangie Spios, which was the first single malt Scotch whiskey to be fully matured in American X rye cask, we learned a lot from that, and we incorporated those learnings into what became Triple Cask Reserve. So the second cask involved here is first fill X American rye cask. And then the third bit is primary maturation ex bourbon oak, followed with secondary maturation in new charred white American oak. So a fairly aggressive char on that one. Medium toast and a somewhat aggressive char on the new oak aspect of Triple Cask Reserve. Somewhat different than what we would do with a whiskey like Tale of Ice Cream.
Wait, so you're saying that while the American whiskey industry that's forced to use new charred American oak or new charred oak is having a hard time sourcing and is talking about how they're having a hard time getting barrels, you've introduced a new expression that uses those same hard to get barrels?
Yes. And the reason that we do that and that we can do that is that we have some really strong relationships. If you go back before the purchase of the Glenmorangie Company by LVMH, we were imported to the U.S. by our pals at Brown-Forman. And so our relationship with the Brown-Forman cooperage in Louisville is really strong. So beyond what we deal with in terms of seasoned oak or used oak, the stuff that we get from Speyside Cooperage, our long-standing, ongoing relationship with Brown-Forman Cooperage in Louisville helps us to an extent to source the kind of cask that we want. Certainly, that sweet French handbag money comes in pretty handy in terms of acquiring the cask that we're looking for that may be slightly out of reach for some of the other folks in the industry. I'm not justifying anything about that, but it does open up the playbook for us a bit. And sure, to a degree, I'm sure that we will face some of the same challenges that the rest of the industry and the American whiskey industry faces. But our stock profile as it sits currently is well positioned to allow us to begin to keep doing these kinds of things well into the future. I haven't done a whole lot of experimentation with water here. I do really like Triple Cask Reserve neat. I'm assuming the addition of water here is going to bring out a little bit more wood spice and maybe subdue a little bit of what you might identify as core esters, particularly citrusy esters that one might associate with Glenmorangie. If you go, and Jeff, you probably have 1 or 2 or 10 or 12 bottles of Spios at home. If you go back and okay, two, good, well done. You go back and dig into that one a little bit. The rye influence is a bit more pronounced than it is here, mostly because that whiskey was entirely mature in next rye cask. In this case, it isn't. Part of it is full maturation in first fill X rye, but it isn't an overt flavor or aromatic set of characteristics that one could easily trace back to. Oh hell, there it is. There's the rye. That's not the point. Particularly in an ongoing release from Glenmorangie, the whole idea is like fine cooking. You want all of the component elements to meet in a harmonious and balanced way, so that no one thing is jumping out and screaming for your attention at the expense of the subtlety or the depth or the nuance or the richness or the complexity of the overall whiskey experience. Is this everybody's first time with triple cask, or has anybody had it before this sitting? Most people's first time. I'm gathering. Great. Any knee-jerk reactions so far?
Good.
This one will sit on the shelf depending on where you're buying your whiskeys, typically under 40 US. So, it's a very approachable price point and set of flavor characteristics. It's certainly bottled, being bottled at 40 ABV, it opens up a lot of different playbooks in terms of applications. Our friends in whiskey bars and cocktail bars do look upon this pretty favorably, because it gives them, and it's a somewhat big deal for us that our friends in cocktail creation look upon something that we do and say, we can use that as a recruitment tool, whether the treatment of it, i.e. its application in cocktails, appeals to everyone. One of the things that it can do is to open the door to single malt for people that wouldn't have necessarily even known the door was there. So is Glenmorangie's role as ambassadors to the category, as a large, wide open, padded doorway into single malt, with sort of chucking rose petals at people's feet as they approach the door. We're really proud of that. We get pigeonholed from time to time, and I understand why it happens. We get pigeonholed as beginner whiskey from time to time, and I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing, as long as it's not pervasive across the entire line, because that, I think, can become sort of boring to the extent of being self-redundanting, if that's a word. We want people to see us as a welcoming interface. The single malt isn't every single malt out there isn't necessarily the most welcoming interface for the uninitiated. We don't feel like every single bottling that we put out needs to be, case in point, Tale of the Forest. But the stuff that we do, like Original and Triple Cask Reserve, we do feel like it should be welcoming. It should be approachable. It should be at the ideal intersection between complexity and approachability. What gives us, to a degree, the capacity to commit to that side of the consumer equation is that we also make Ardbeg, which in and of itself isn't necessarily the most wide open doorway into the category of single malt Scotch whiskey. It is a portal to a certain segment of the single malt Scotch whiskey category, and that portal can be unbelievably fascinating, but it isn't necessarily a portal that is easy to navigate from day one of your whiskey journey. Glenmoe's different. Glenmoe is navigable from day one, and I think complex and interesting enough to keep the journey fascinating, no matter how far you want to go down that road with us.
So Dan, I was going to say, both of these, the original and the triple cask, are very drinkable, meaning, you can share that with anybody, and even the people that are not super into scotch. And I think
Right.
they'll enjoy it, but they're not boring. By drinkable, I don't mean boring, right? These are actually really interesting. You could sit and chat about both of these, and you can't do that with a lot of other intro whiskeys. So
Yeah,
one most,
yeah,
yeah.
couldn't agree more. Appreciate the insights there. That's that intersection of complexity and approachability. I think it's hard. It's a hard one to hit consistently over the course of time. And I feel like I've been working directly on these whiskeys with the company for going into year 11, and working as a representative for them for the 10 years before that as well. And the thing I think that I've seen many times over is, yeah, there are loads of whiskeys that will help you open the door, that will help meet you where you are. And um, they tend not, that's not fair. Some of them tend to act in a training wheels capacity so that you graduate from them. And again, there's no issue with that. It's completely fine. I would, granted, I'm biased, but I'd make the argument that even in our intro level things, which is really just reflective of price point, it's not really reflective of the quality of liquid because it's awesome. I would offer the opinion that a whiskey like Triple Cask Reserve is fascinatingly deep while being incredibly approachable across the board. So it isn't as though, once the training wheels come off, you can dump all of your bottles of Triple Cask. It still has plenty to say to you as you evolve as a whiskey drinker. I really like that whiskey a lot. Now, some of you may remember um, our first foray into, X by Glenmorangie. You may remember that we attempted a thing, and the thing was attempted in good faith for good reasons at a terrible time. We rolled out a whiskey that we wanted bartenders to play with, and then COVID shut all the bars down. So that whiskey got its legs cut out from under it. It may be a whiskey you enjoy, maybe it isn't. We don't make it anymore, so if you do enjoy it, pick some up. If you didn't, I understand, totally get it. I've always liked it, but it got forced into a role it was not designed to play, and so the idea that it is no longer with us is a function of a highly unpredictable launch window. And so, just like what happened when we made Spios, or really any other whiskey, particularly experimental whiskeys, one-off whiskeys, limited edition whiskeys, we tend to look at those the same way that Honda looks at being in Formula One. You're not going to buy a Formula One vehicle from Honda, but what they learn from being in Formula One, the lessons learned, the engineering lessons learned, inform how they build their cars for everybody else. So when we do a whiskey like, and somebody had mentioned it, Sonalta PX, or Pride 81, or Spios, or any number of, somebody had mentioned Elanta, the idea of a heavily toasted new oak extended maturation. That's what Elanta was, and it's certainly informed a number of the whiskeys we produced since. So anything that we're doing, Dr. Bill is a meticulous and curious enough, science-minded individual to take those learnings and have them continue to inform the evolution of the brand under his stewardship, understanding full well that Bill's been, let me think about this. Bill, as of about, I want to say March or so, Bill will have been at Glenmorangie in some capacity or another for 30 years. So that's a lot. but it is not 182. Certainly, there have been some very influential and effective stewards of the brand that came before him. He's done his bit. He'll continue to do his bit. And when his time is complete, the next steward of the brand will have their impact. They will also have their walking papers in terms of when Bill arrived at Glenmorangie in 1995. David McDonald, the senior member of the McDonald family, and McDonald and Muir, the owners at the time of Glenmorangie, said to Bill, "We're going to give you a lot of rope. We want to know what you're capable of. We know you're a curious guy, highly talented, PhD in biochemistry, blah, blah, blah. But don't screw with the flagship expression," which of course he has now done. But at that point, the idea was we need some things to remain as consistent as they possibly can while exploring all of this new territory. So in year one, he's not going to make the shift from a 10 to a 12-year Glenmorangie original. But in year 30, to a degree, he's earned the right to do that. He's had, 1/6 of the existence of the brand has been under his tutelage. He's earned the right to do that, and he did it. So these are all just facets of how you can look at a thing and say, okay, this brand has been around, Bemore or whatever it is, his brand's been around a billion years, or Port of Leith that's been around not a billion years. Each one of those brands has its own evolutionary trajectory, and each one of them, I think, is worth exploring for that reason. So we're just another brand evolving in the way that is unique to us. So having said that, let's dig out a little bit of that Calvados cask, because I'm jonesing. I love this whiskey. I'm going to shut up. I don't love it or hate it. I'm completely neutral until you've had a chance to try it. This is bottle of 46 ABV. We'll tell you a little bit about the cask provenance once everybody got it in their glass. Looks a bit like that. Hopefully that focuses and the light's too glary, but it's part of the Barrel Select release series. That series includes the Malaga cask 12-year, Cognac cask 13-year. We did a Apollo Cortado cask 12-year. The Barrel Select release series includes an Amontillado cask 12-year that did not come to the United States. And the reason for that was that Glenmorangie Cadwall Estate 15-year batch 3 also just happened to be coming out at that time, targeted for the US market and finished in Amontillado sherry cask. So those two whiskeys we wanted to keep separate because their messages were a little too similar. But Cadwall Estate 15 batch 3 was a very sort of a specifically targeted to the US release. So you didn't see that one. And then this is the latest Calvados cask 12-year. The Barrel Select release series, and you can judge us if you will. I don't blame you. The bulk of the Barrel Select releases end up at Total Wine. I have my personal thoughts on the Goliath versus 10,000 Davids. And I cannot share this with you or I will be summarily fired. But it's the reality of the situation. And so if the Barrel Select releases thrill you and you have a Total near you, you're more likely to see them there than in other retail outlets, although it is not exclusive to them because that's not allowed.
I think our local Mission liquor has more of those than our Total Wine does.
That does my soul good, even though I have not said that out loud at all.
And at a better price, too. It looks like there's a Cadwall 4 out as well. Is that new?
Yeah, it is pending. One of the things it exists, and it'll be here, and it'll be really compelling, particularly for the Star fans among you. I think I saw some of the Star fans. Designer cask is the cask story behind Cadwell 4. Same cask provenance as a Star. Now, a slightly lower ABV, obviously, but older. 50, minimum 15 years. All our own barley in our own proprietary designer cask setup, which is again a collaboration between ourselves and the Brown-Forman cooperage in Louisville. Now, before we dig too far into the Calvados Cask 12-year, are there any rabid Calvados drinkers among you? I knew that. I think I knew that about you. Okay, great, awesome. So Calvados is, of course, incredible. This we'll describe a little bit of what's going on in this one. You can typically, well, you used to be able to typically assume that if Glenmorangie has the number 12 on it, then its first 10 years were spent in ex-bourbon oak. That is the case with this one as well. Now, that's not always going to be the case moving forward, and it wasn't always the case in the past. But this is the math on this is fairly simple: 10 plus 2. The final 2 years, you guessed it, Calvados cask. But those Calvados casks were specifically Calvados Pays d'Auge. So if you are Calvados aficionados, you will recognize that that delineation as being the fruit, the apples and pears, have to be sourced from Normandy. Fermentation schedule's got to be at least, I want to say, 6 weeks or some crazy amount of fermentation time. And cask maturation's got to be at least 2 years. Now, the cask that we got, the Calvados Pays d'Auge cask that we got, had Calvados Pays d'Auge in them for 20 years before we got a hold of them. So the impact, the saturation level, the absolute driven in essences, Calvados essences in those casks, fairly significant. And I think it shows up really nicely on the nose and palate here. The chat, love it. Yeah, no, I'm a completely neutral observer of that retail environment, for the record. As a consumer, I might have a slightly different feeling about it. But as a member of the industry wearing a certain brand on my sweater, I have absolutely no opinion at all. Thoughts on Calvados cask?
I feel like single malt really takes well to Calvados casks. I don't think I've had a bad Calvados cask single malt in general.
Right there with you. I think the first one that I had, and this was years ago, was a 14-year-old Springbank that had spent half its life at Calvados cask. It was a one-off, and it was just genius, just a brilliant liquid. And so when I read that we were doing this, I was really thrilled.
Getting some interesting cedar notes along with the apple right off the top of the palate. It's like a brisk fall day walking through some kind of orchard next to a forest. It's the weirdest combo, but it's so
yeah. I get a little spice on the end on the way out, and I think that's that you're talking about, Jane.
It's like I get a lot of like spiced pears, like a spiced pear galette with that little bit of like that woody note in it.
Good call with the pineapple and forest thing. It's a really interesting juxtaposition. It's there. It is just jumping out in my face. Ooh. So this one, so the first two, part of the permanent range, part of the core range. You'll be able to track those down in many, many places. This one, a one-off. When it's gone kind of a thing. We aren't the kindest in terms of respecting your rods and cones, because those are very similar colors. So you're going to have to be a little bit careful in terms of trying to discern which is which on on the shelf. This one's just got a little bit more of whatever the hell that color is. I don't know. More tangerine undertones, maybe. I don't know. This is original 12-year. That's Calvados Cast 12-year. And I suppose no. Yes, and all the little designations, all the little limited editions and bottled. This has got a bottling date badge on it that you wouldn't find with original. Although you could track it down with the bottle code that's etched in down here somewhere. This one was bottled on April 23rd of 2024. So it's a bit superfluous. See if these line up. Did we lie to ourselves and to you as a people? No, we did not. August 24th of 2023.
I think the Calvados
Anybody?
Cast is the only one that didn't come in a box.
Oh, yes. So the Barrel Selects, no box.
Okay.
And I think you probably see a little bit more of that from us from time to time in terms of trying to reduce superfluous secondary packaging and things like that. You may see more of those kinds of things happen. I love what we do with our boxes, particularly the Tale of series has had some fantastic boxes. But in terms of environmental stewardship, you probably see an ongoing reduction in superfluous packaging.
Especially that metal one for the original.
Right. Yeah, somebody made me a lamp out of that. The giraffe print one. It's lovely. I wish you could see it. I don't even know if it's plugged in, but a friend, golly, it was somebody from the Oklahoma group, Jeff, who made that thing. You can see it right there, kind of where to go. That thing right above my thingy. That was one of the one-off limited edition tins that we did for Glenmorangie Original, a giraffe print with holes blasted in it.
Do
It
you
made
still
me a
have
lamp.
the bottle of 18 that Adam Mogul made for when we did the tasting in person?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Somewhere yes, I do.
Okay.
Fantastic. I don't know if you remember when we did the Azuma Makoto packaging for Glenmorangie 18 with the lovely floral print stuff all over it. Oh, there's one. Hang on just a sec. So this was quite a cool package as well. This is why we'll never really go away from secondary packaging because we just don't want to. But this was a one-off. It was the same stuff, the same liquid, Glenmo 18, just a collaborative effort between ourselves and our pal, Japanese floral sculptor, Azuma Makoto, who keen-eyed observers might know by now that we collaborated with him on an actual whiskey, the Azuma Makoto and Dr. Bill Lumsden 23-year Merceau finish, which is extraordinary. If you get a chance to run across that one, it is unfortunately no slouch price point wise, but it is a fantastic whiskey.
Well, that's like the Glenmo 18 golf packages. They were like freaking huge.
Yeah. Sometimes we lose our minds a little bit, and some of the things that we've maybe slipped into Costco's and such, where it's just a monstrous thing with
and all the grand vintages. Those boxes weigh like 50 pounds.
They're stunning. They're really well made. In case you need to, I don't know, like
add to your house foundation or something.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. If you've got a sagging foundation, or if you have a particularly favorite gopher in your life and you want to give it a proper burial, it makes a really lovely gopher casket. If that's a thing that you need at any point. I'm just savoring the hell out of this Calvados cask.
I thought you were going to say, in case you needed to kill a certain.
No, well, I mean, yes, that too, but depending on how you want to memorialize it.
Right, double duty. You can be the sledgehammer that kills it, and
exactly.
Yes.
Precisely. So that's whiskey 3. Let me just check the. Oh yeah, the cake box and bottle was quite awesome. The Grand Vintage box is awesome. If you get, I wonder if I have it somewhere. If you see somewhere, I do have it. The box and bottle of Azuma Makoto 23 year is stunning. Let me see if I can find it. It's around here somewhere. Ah, found it. So this just came out. Looks a bit like that. Glare looks terrible, but that I'm moving away from showing it to you. But it's quite cool. So it's got these little Frankenstein bolts, and you yank those suckers out, and the whole thing kind of pops off. And there's no bottle in there, but it's just stunning. It's just cool as hell. The bottle is too. It's around here somewhere. I thought it was in there, but it's not. Bottle of 46 ABV. This one, as far as I know, 10 years in ex bourbon oak, 13 years in Merceau cask, and it's a humdinger. So from there, let's see. Nice, perfect, right on. We can talk, Jeff, if you're interested. So from there, let's do this. Let's jump into some Tokyo. So Glenmorangie A Tale of Tokyo. If you own the box and bottle on this one, you will see that the artist depiction of the city of Tokyo is really fascinating. And on occasion, you will see the visage of Dr. Bill Lumsden wandering around his favorite city in the world, which is Tokyo.
Is this like Where's Waldo, but where's Bill?
Yes, with Bill. That box and bottle are quite cool. Regardless of what you think of Tale of Forest, and I totally get it, the box and bottle are really damn cool. That artist, Pom Chan, I believe was her name. She's worth a follow on Instagram. She's an amazing artist.
Wow, the nose on this Tale of Tokyo is so different from the Calvados.
Yeah. This was the first time that we'd had an opportunity to work with Mizunara. Bill had been trying for years to get a hold of enough Mizunara casks to do even a limited release run. And we paid through the nose for them. Again, the French handbag money. But we paid, God, I think they were $6,000 a cask. Oh boy. And those were, of course, toasted and virgin Mizunara. So that ended up being a component, a finish component, as opposed to full maturation. It just would have been, in terms of one of the things that we've got to be careful with, in terms of maturing Glenmorangie, is that as a new make, it is a relatively delicate liquid. And so very effusive casks can steal the soul of Glenmorangie and replace it with a less dimensional and more singularly cask-driven set of flavor and aromatic characteristics, which we don't want. So we've got to be very careful in terms of how we use iconic, idiosyncratic wood types, including, of course, Mizunara. The other thing that we've got to be careful, and anybody using Mizunara oak has got to be careful of, is that it leaks like hell.
So for the people who are drinking this, tasting this for the first time, it is jarring to leave the first three and then land on a Tale of Tokyo.
It really is.
So I feel like if you're offended by it or you're thrown off by it, you should maybe come back to it tomorrow or something and try it again, because
Nice.
to give it a fair shake, because it really truly is, wow, after these more delicate drams, this one's big. But
yeah,
it's
well spotted.
that really puts a lot into it, and And there's other aspects. Dan will explain everything to us.
Could you tell me
boy.
about the years in the different casks?
I can approximate.
Yeah.
Bill didn't release that data. It's a non-age stated whiskey, so we don't have specifics on purpose. Bill kept those to himself. But given what we're looking at in terms of Virgin Mizunara's capacity to release a tremendous amount of flavor potential and its propensity to leak, I can't imagine we spent more than 3 years in that cask. So my guess is this is probably a max of 15. If I found out it was less, and if I found out it was less time in Mizunara, it would not shock me. But I think those are your outside figures.
Thank you.
This just continues to evolve in the glass. Man, water kind of, to me, brings out a little bit of a dillweed hit, which is quite cool. Tiny bit. Dusty. The catchphrase in terms of trying to put a finger on this, and it may just be aspirational perception, but you hear a lot of references to temple incense in the tasting notes of Mizunara influenced whiskeys. And again, it may be a placebo, it may be power suggestion, but I do see where they're coming from. It's incensey. And as we had never used Mizunara at Glenmorangie before, there are, of course, going to be characteristics in this whiskey that have never been reflected in a Glenmorangie in its 182 years history until this came out.
For me, this is one of those whiskeys when, like, if I'm in a certain mood and I'm trying to think what mood, like maybe I'm a little annoyed and I want something to push back on against me, like,
sure.
I'm growling and I need somebody to growl back at me. I'll take this, not because it's growling at me, just because it calms me down, right? There's so much in here and I've got to think about it. And the Mizunara has its own thing going on there and it challenges me. And so this is something I'll be drinking this weekend. I can tell you that.
Excellent. To your point, I think that the sink your teeth into whiskeys, the massively dimensional whiskeys are unabashed, to your point, but they also encourage robust contemplation, which I think is part of the point of serious the serious quote unquote pursuit of single malt. Not that it has to be this very rigid thing, but I think it's there's no Cliff's Notes version of this. I mean, there is, you just hammer it or whatever, but the Cliff's Notes they'll help you pass a quiz, but they don't tell the story as the story was written. They'll only give you the sort of the bird's eye view of the basic idea of the thing. And if you want to neck this, I'm not going to blame you. It's completely fine. But it does give you an opportunity to, and I think this is why any good whiskey does this really well. It encourages you to embrace the opportunity to punch out and live in the moment. That sort of Zen moment in time thing where nothing in the past, nothing in the future. None of those things now is not the time to grapple with those things. Every other minute of your day is the time to grapple with those things. This is not that minute. It's supposed to be an exist in the moment and a oneness, not just with the liquid, but with the vision behind it, the creativity and the production process and the craftsmanship and the people and the culture and the place and the raw materials and the alchemic magic that happens as a result of its existence in the first place. All those things come together to sort of give you a crystalline moment It's a bit like you say, whiskey's going to continue to evolve in a barrel. You're going to continue to evolve as an individual. Whiskey comes out of the barrel and it's like a mosquito frozen in amber. It's now a statement. It's now a sort of you sure it'll continue to condition in the bottle and evolve over time in that little air pocket. And as the air pocket grows in the bottle, the whiskey embraces that sort of material change as well. But for the most part, you have this sort of mosquito in amber moment where people somehow figured out a way to stop time just long enough for you to exist in this ethereal floating moment that has no past or future, only the now. That's what this kind of drinking is about to me.
Yeah. And I think, incense is something that's pretty common around the world, and it's sort of a meditative thing, right?
Yes.
It brings you into focus in the moment. And there's a lot of that quality right here in the incense-ness of it.
Right. I hadn't really, you read the literature on it. It's like, okay, you can kind of put yourself in that time frame or in that mindset. But the psychosensory aspects of what happens with the inhaling of incense or aromatherapy or whatever it is, that shifting of one's perceptions based on not the manipulation of, but the conscious awareness of what certain senses are fed. We don't talk about this stuff quite as much as we should because it gets a little geeky. But aromatics in particular, because of how they're wired, in terms of the neural pathways. The only thing so there's the old part of the brain, the new part of the brain, and the thing in the middle is the thalamus, and it's kind of the switchboard. And pretty much all of your sensory input is routed through this switchboard, and then the switchboard sends it to where it ought to go, except aroma, which is based in an ancient neural pathway that goes straight from your olfactory epithelium to your memories, hardwired. So that this is your life aspect of aromatic recognition and the tying of aromatic recognition to memories of your own past that you didn't even know you were harboring. That kind of thing is also encourages a nonverbal contemplation conversation with oneself. So in a lot of ways, whether in therapy or whether you're getting a massage or whatever it is, there's that dialogue. But with aromatics, there's no dialogue needed. It's a photographic review of everything that you've experienced to that point. You don't need words when you're looking at pictures. And essentially aromatics just starts to make a photo montage happen in your head. Sits for a bit in some of that, and again, maybe it's psychosomatic, but there's a little bit of a citrusy green tea thing happening there too. Now it wasn't there to begin with, at least not for me. A slightly savory note. The one thing that I haven't done, and it seems a little almost too knee-jerk to drink this while eating, sushi or whatever it is, but I think it'd work really well.
Yeah, I think that savory note I would classify in with umami.
Yep.
Really has
Boom.
that note to it. And just the concept of tying the smell into memories. And this definitely, I think you're right. I think this would be really grand with sushi.
I need to do that as quick as possible. Yeah, this is a stunner. Is anybody any other sort of open thoughts about Tale of Tokyo? Most people's first experience with it, or okay, awesome, very cool. Well, I hope you enjoy it, and if you don't, then to the point that was made earlier, maybe revisit it in a bit, and you may still not enjoy it. But I think this is one that has the capacity to. There's enough complexity there, and there's enough intrigue and allure and mystique happening in the glass that the time of day or day of week or your prevailing mood going into the situation could have profound effects on how a whiskey like this shows up on the nose and palate.
I'm a big fan of Glenmorangie, and I love Mizunara finishes, so I grabbed a bottle of this the second it hit the shelves last year.
Awesome. Very cool.
I was like stalking my stores because I got an alert on my news feed that it was coming out, so I was like just like waiting at all of my local liquor stores to see who got it first.
And
So I got it the second it was out.
Did it meet your expectations then? Did you feel
yeah, I mean,
like
one of the things I love about Mizunara, and I know a lot of people mention like the incense, and I think that's just Mizunara has such a unique spice profile that you don't get from any other wood, and that's one of the things I love about it. I mean, yeah, I can see how it can come off sort of like incensey, but I loved it.
Awesome. And again, this may not be everybody's cup of joe. And I think that obviously it goes sort of without saying that goes for every whiskey out there. Somebody's going to love it, and it's just not going to be somebody's cup of tea. I think that's part of what makes this category completely fascinating. And this is not to disparage Fireball, but there's a limited number of reactions that a person's probably going to have to a glass of Fireball, and that's okay. This stuff is open to a broader spectrum of interpretations across a broader spectrum of palate sensitivities. So with that, I'm going to grab my tail of ice cream.
So the tails, how many tails come out every year?
Just the one, and it's usually around October. This one, it has been slow in showing up in market for whatever reason. It should be where you are either by now or very soon. I live in Nebraska, so everything happens sort of last here. It hasn't arrived just yet in market.
So between the finishing releases being limited and the tails being limited, how many limited releases is Glenmorangie putting out every year? And how's that been for you as someone who tries to represent? I mean, that's got to get taxing.
It can. In some years we've overdone it with both Glenmorangie and Ardbeg. There have been years where it's like, what the? Let's pump the brakes. And then there have been some years where it's like, give me something to work with here.
I can imagine guys like Jeff who are completionists. I mean, it's okay when a brand has 4 or 5 and then puts a new one out every year. Well, you're trying to catch 5 new Pokemon every year to add to the 5 you already have on the shelf.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can have that with Ardbeg. I mean, Jesus, they put out 5, 6, 7 special releases every year. You just can't keep up.
You can't. And Ardbeg, for the record, I say this now. I don't run the joint, so I can't necessarily say that the lesson will stick. But the lesson so far, it has been heard. I think you'll see in 2025. I think I'm not in the ivory tower meetings, but I think you'll see pumping of the brakes in terms of Ardbeg special releases for 2025.
Which is going to piss people off too. You can't make it.
That will, and I understand. I mean, it's so subjective. What people's aspirations for the category are, and we try to exist in a kind of in a middle ground that we hope people, if nothing else, understand our motivations for having done what we did. Bill, he certainly is an insatiably curious fella. With a very low boredom threshold, and he'd be the first to admit it. But even he recognizes, okay, we can't just all this stuff that I'm rabidly enthusiastic about. We gotta calm down a little. Mostly, not mostly, but at least to a degree, because the retail shelf is a finite thing. Where's it going to go? Particularly if the last expression is still lingering on the shelf, then it puts you in a crappy situation retail wise, because now you're crowding the shelf with things that appear to not be moving, which is of course not great for brand perception. Might be great in terms of, wow, look at all these cool things, but we're also trying to manage um, brand image to a degree. So we got to be cognizant of what we're doing to ourselves in that respect. And
That's
Ardbeg,
appreciate
I think
these
they're good at
limits
that.
being under $100 for the most part. Whereas, you still have those $1,000 23-year-old Mizunara ones, which for most, I mean, I'm not gonna speak for anyone else, but for me are well outside my budget. But for $100, I can splurge and get a bottle and try something new.
What we've tried to do with Glenmorangie and Ardbeg is to represent as many segments of that spectrum as we respectfully can. We certainly the folks at the distillery, the folks working on the brands, we're subject to the same economic pressures as everybody else. So it's lovely for me to see something like Tokyo or ice cream come out, and just to write around that 110, 90 to 110 US ballpark. Not gonna no permanent damage. I don't need a second mortgage or anything. And then yeah, this stuff is like I'm probably not going to jump into a car and go spend $1,100 on a Zuma 23 or whatever we're asking for Ardbeg the Abyss, which I think is $35,000 at this point. So, a few people have access to that, and that's great. For the rest of us, the Ardbeg Day releases, the Ardbeg Anthology releases, the 13, 14, and 15. We're on 14 now, the Unicorn's Tale. Those kinds of things, they are still in a somewhat reasonable price point. You start to get into the Trayvons, the 19-year batches, and they're pushing 240, 250, or Signet Reserve, which is just about to come out. Flirting with $500 and that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, we have a thing in that price range, and yay. But for the strong preponderance of whiskey drinkers, that's a somewhat ludicrous set of price points.
While you were talking, I took a sip of the tail of ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
It was all the things I wanted it to be. It's so damn good. Oh my God.
It is really good.
For everyone that talks smack about this one, send me your sample. I'll drink it.
Well, and I think part of it, one of the things that we do, for better or for worse, at Glenmorangie is we kind of forget to get too wrapped up in perceptions, kind of. When Taylor Cake came out, I thought, because I was sitting in the meeting where they launched the concept of it and the branding and all those kinds of things, and I thought we'd absolutely lost our damn minds. Like, we're doing what now? We're calling this thing what? And it looks like a cake. And I thought, okay, we need to maybe seek help, because this is now we're plowing a completely different field. And when it came out, and in my little table of my colleagues at the time, I think the consensus was we can only hang our hats on the quality of Bill's output for so long before even the quality of the liquid won't save us from being looked at as functionally insane people. And then Cake came out and it worked. And I hadn't seen the physical bottle. I'd only seen the mock-ups and the PowerPoints and the so on and so forth. And it's very detached and very impersonal and very corporate. And so anything with that sort of corporate PowerPoint deck thing, and you've got marketing people saying things, you're almost convinced, how are these people going to muck this up? And in that case, it rocked. I was stunned. You're going to see a thing happen next year, and I can't really say much about it, but you're going to see a thing happen in the first half of 2025, and maybe probably beyond. That I thought at first blush was going to be again in tail of cake mode. On paper, it looked like a fundamental error in judgment. And the more I see what we're doing with this thing that I was convinced was a terrible idea, the more I get now why I don't occupy a C-suite and make those kinds of decisions. Because I think it's going to be fantastic. But I started my life, my relationship with this thing we're about to do as a vocal skeptic. And so I'm pleased that my position on it is evolving based on how I'm seeing it evolve. And part of that is out of the experience of how the Tale of series has evolved for me and for the public and for whiskey consumers in particular. I've learned to shut my mouth a little bit. We've had missteps, of course we have. If we didn't, I think a corporate culture that is frightened of making mistakes is a corporate culture that has no purpose, has no reason to exist. It's boring as hell. So the fact that we are part of a giant French multinational and still have the capacity to do not oddball stuff, but the unexpected, to perform the unexpected, and to have it sometimes be brilliant and sometimes not. I love that. I love the humanness of that. I love the fact that this is not like going out and buying a new set of truck tires. Those need to be consistent. They need to be exactly what they are because your life relies upon them being exactly what they are all the time. We're not making that stuff. We're making idiosyncratic, uncontrollable. It's a loose agreement between nature, chemistry, and people, with people being the ones that are probably the least in control of it.
So the Tale of started in 2020 with Tale of Cake. So there's only 4 or 5 releases, right?
Yeah, let me think about this. Cake, Winter, Forest, Tokyo, Ice Cream. So this is 5.
So if someone wanted to collect the whole Tale of series, it wouldn't be crazy.
It wouldn't be super difficult, although Cake could be hard to come by. The other ones you probably would either find Winter, which I thought was great, Marsala Cash. Winter, I've been this year in retail environments that. Sorry, you were breaking up just a little bit.
Well, he's gone.
Go on.
I think the winter is.
You're muted. Now you're muted, and you have no service.
I gotta have bed service.
Oh, gotcha.
Understood. I think your point was that winter, there was a decent amount of winter, and it wasn't necessarily super hot off the shelf. Cake was pretty blistering, and winter, which tends to be the case back in the private edition world. Sonalta, it's another thing that Bill has a habit of doing. When he releases a particularly successful limited edition, he relishes the opportunity to follow it with something objectively weird, which is what happened with Finalta. Now, this is years ago, but Sonalta PX came out in whatever the hell that was, 2010. I want to say by 2011 we'd put out the first high-profile peated Glenmorangie release, at least in my tenure, and it confused the shit out of everybody, and it didn't sell particularly well. And Bill was thrilled because it was like, oh, okay, you think you know me, and the same thing with Taylor Forest. Taylor Forest was this micro generation's Finalta. Bill's insatiable penchant for zagging when people expect him to zig, and that fuels that not only fuels his creative process, but it also satisfies his inner mischief maker, which is itself insatiable.
Daniel, can you tell me a little bit more about the peated Glenmo?
Oh yes, so there have been a few now, and they've all been somewhat mildly peated. We haven't done, and I think it'd be pointless to do an aggressively peated Glenmorangie because you'd just lose it. You would just lose it to the peat. But Finalta, what we did there was a lightly, lightly peated Glenmo in ex-bourbon oak, and again that was 2011. It goes back to if you see that packaging anywhere, it looks like it's very Art Deco. Because it was the result of our archivist at the time, who's a hell of a cool guy. I still follow him on LinkedIn. He's great. Ian Russell. Ooh, follow Ian Russell on LinkedIn. You'll find he will post some super cool stuff. He used to be the archivist for the Glenmorangie Company, and he had run across some fairly convincingly real production notes for Glenmorangie from the turn of the 20th century. So the age, the artist décoratif era. And so Penalta was our conscious attempt to put a Glenmorangie in the bottle that tasted as close as we could approximate to what it would have tasted like at the turn of the 20th century. When we had our own malting floors, there would have been at least some mild use of peat. And so that one, Finalta is again our best attempt to bottle a Glenmorangie that tastes like it did 100 years ago. Well, now more than 100 years ago. And then more recently, Taylor Forest, in addition to having been peated, the thing that we did with the Taylor Forest that we couldn't really tell people because it wasn't necessarily we got in a lot of trouble for it with the SWA, with the Scotch Whisky Association, because in addition to driving the kiln with some peat, with a decent amount of peat, but not a huge amount, we just happened to chuck in a few extra things into the kiln that included juniper berries and birch bark and heather blossoms. So the idea behind Tale of the Forest, when we invariably got in trouble for it, what we had to do, and this is how you, not necessarily how you always skirt the issue of being in trouble with the SWA, but it will help you immensely if you can demonstrate historical precedent. And so Bill's demonstration of historical precedent was, you don't think that whiskey makers going back 150 years would have used any flammable thing they could get their hands on to run kilns to dry barley. Juniper oil is quite a flammable thing. Birch bark, heather blossoms, these things are plentiful in Scottish countryside. So these things would have ended up in kilns going back 150 years or so. So we got away with it, and they were still pissed, and they made us stop saying the word botanicals, even though it's all over the packaging. We didn't tell them what we'd done until we'd already released it. So they made us promise to use the word combustibles when we talk about Tale of the Forest, but they've even forgotten about it now, so we can say whatever we want. But at the time, it was an irritant to them. But that's another example of repeated Glenmorangie. The current 14-year travel retail Glenmo, so that's Elementa. Elementa is lightly peated as well. So if the trouble with making a peated Glenmo is that people drink Glenmo maybe because they don't like peated whiskey, and people who like peated whiskey don't tend to drink Glenmo. So when you make a peated Glenmo, you appeal to exactly sort of no one. So that's kind of the reason that we don't do very many of them. But each one that we've done, I've found beguiling. If you get a chance to try Elementa, it's really, really good. And under Bill's watchful eye and an experienced tutelage, the peating levels of these whiskeys are well within a manageable range for the fundamental characteristics of Glenmorangie not to be trampled underfoot, as one might think when you look at how those whiskeys are constructed on paper, at least.
Thank you.
Damn.
Look up some of these and check them out.
Yeah, and please, if you feel like it, drop me a note. Let me know what you thought of them, because I loved them, kind of more than I even wish I did, because it in order to effectively represent Glenmorangie 24/7, it complicates things when you like the peated versions as much as I do. I guess is the simplest way to say that. And this is my maiden voyage adding water to a tail of ice cream. And I should tell you kind of what we did here.
One, I tend to get some vegetal notes. I wonder if
I like it.
Any of that cask is ex-rye or something.
There is a particularly when the water goes in, there's a savory sort of like a stocky savory happening there along with. So here's what happened with the cask, just so that you can sort of make an informed determination about what it is that you might be running into in terms of their organoleptic nature of Tale of Ice Cream. This came from a specific collaboration with Independent Stave Company. So the folks at ISC, we worked specifically with them to create a cask profile that is now in their catalog as Profile 52. And Profile 52 casks are an aggressive toast followed by a pretty light char. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen just long enough to try to explain why we would do that. Give me just a second to try to manage that interface effectively. That goes away. Okay, here we go. That's going to go away as well. So I'm going to go back here and share my screen to show you just a little bit of a chart in terms of why we would do this thing. Now, hopefully you can see that effects of heat on lignin degradation. This is from the Institute of Brewing and Distilling Learning Materials. That's another set of certifications that I can't possibly recommend more highly if I tried. The IBD General Certificate in Distilling is an amazing course, well worth the time and effort to bludgeon yourself through that. And if you are aggressive fan of self-punishment, moving on to the IBD Diploma series, that is again an abject, horrifying nightmare. But holy cow, it's a cool program. I'm still in the process of piecing my way through the diploma program. But I took the GCD certification series program, and I thought it was ultra amazing. And this is part of the IBD's education stuff. So if you look at these are 1, 2, 3, 5 different precursors to lignin that then end up being broken back down in through heat degradation. So if you look at these toast temps, this is just heating the wood, not starting it on fire. So you have these varying 100C, 150C, 200C. You have these increasing concentrations of these 5 aldehydes. You'll see vanillin listed there as second. But when you get into charring, you'll see that they all take a dive. And so if you're looking to, which was what we were trying to do, if you're looking to maximize vanillin potential in your cask, start with a new cask, start with American oak, toast the bejesus out of it, and then keep your char regimen as light as you can. And what you end up with is what the packaging refers to as high vanillin cask, which sounds like marketing double speak, but this is what it means. This is the ISC Profile 52 cask is based on this principle that you see in that chart there. So we'll stop sharing, go back to the normal screen, but hopefully that'll give you a little bit more insight into what we did and why we did it in terms of the production of Tale of Ice Cream. If you're one of the fortunate few to be able to try a Tale of Cake and a Tale of Ice Cream together, the marketing writes itself.
Do you pour Tale of Ice Cream on top of Tale of Cake or the other way around?
I don't know. See, that side by side, you dunk one in the other. I don't know. It's a very good question. So from here, from a Tale of Ice Cream, if you are comfortable with the idea, we'll move on to Glenmorangie 18, extremely rare, soon to become Glenmorangie Infinita.
And I see Infinita behind you. Can you
live
for us taste them side by side and tell us what?
Now that's just the box. I'll have to go and find the bottle wherever the hell it is, but just so that you know what it's gonna look like. Try to get the glare out of there. That's what it'll look like on the shelf in the box. Glen on the side with the swirly stuff, big old orange interior. Let me go try to find one. I know there's one here somewhere. We'll go through this and then I'll grab it and see what happens. Has anybody seen Infinita on the shelf where you are? I haven't yet. So we're back to 43 ABV here from 46. And as for the record, anything that we do that's under 46 ABV at Glenmorangie is chill filtered. Anything that's 46 and above isn't. So what you're looking at here, if you go back to Glenmorangie La Santa as a concept, La Santa is finished. This is actually a little bit closer to, if you find yourself in travel retail and you got, $60 or whatever it is, burn a hole in your pocket, and you want to grab a bottle of Glenmorangie Accord or the Accord, most people think that it's travel retail La Santa. It's not. It is, in fact, a vatting together of Glenmorangie fully matured in ex-bourbon oak with Glenmorangie fully matured in Oloroso sherry cask. So it's not a finish. It's two fully matured parcels vatted together. And I happen to think that Accord is extraordinary whiskey if you get a chance to try it. Now, this is the kissing cousin of both to a degree. The segment, the 30 or so percent of Glenmorangie 18-year extremely rare that sees a finish. That finish is Oloroso sherry cask, first fill, and the finish is slightly longer than we would normally do. So about 30% of this sees a 3-year finish in Oloroso sherry. There's no use of PX like there would be in La Santa. And the rest of this is full maturation in ex-bourbon oak throughout its entire maturation cycle. Where if you are, again, if you're a devotee of the Glenmorangie travel retail line, the 19-year travel retail is being discontinued. So if you love that whiskey, which I do, pick some up because we don't make it anymore.
You're killing me, Smalls.
If you're traveling and you go through global travel retail, right now you're going to see a Glenmorangie 25-year Pommard cask. That is in a rarefied price tier. But I did get a chance to try it. and it's quite possibly one of the best Glenmos I've ever had ever. But it'll set you back a painful amount of money. So it better be that good. It's just that it is.
So you're saying I need to keep my 19 that I don't have open hidden away.
Hang on to that. Yeah, I'd hang on to that.
Shit.
But I bet you'll see that. Of course, I don't necessarily frequent the auction sites as much as I ought to, mostly because I just buy too many things. But I wonder if you wouldn't see, because we made quite a lot of the Travel Retail 19, so it's not like it's the most aggressively rare thing that we've ever done.
I mean, you may know someone who's flying out of the country tomorrow, so if you need one,
Interesting.
I'll be back in 2 weeks.
I think so. We were the Travel Retail core range has the 12, the 14, and the 16. We just swapped out the old 16 Tribute for a new 16 Expression. I can't remember the name of it to save my life. But the Travel Retail range, I think the age statements of the 12, 14, 16 will be somewhat static, but the expressions within those age statements, you may see a cycling in and out. So far, Accord and Elementa have been static, but the 16 just changed to a new expression. I cannot think of what the hell it is off the top of my head. The Tribute, damn, I'll have to look it up. I'll send you. Tell you what I'll do. But I'll send you the specs on all the Travel Retail stuff when we're done, just so that you have it. You can share it if you want or whatever. But we'll get you the latest info.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll share it with the group. Thank you.
Sure.
We're enjoying our last pour. I do want to invite everyone to turn on the cameras for just a second and do our traditional cheers and toast to you for spending the evening with us and to everyone for keeping us company. I know Golan's fighting bad internet, and I know the East Coast is up late, but trying to get everyone on. Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure, as it always is. You're always welcome in our group. Thank you so much. I know last time we saw you in person, we got to see you back again in person at some point in LA.
I'd love that.
But thank you. Thank you very much for spending the evening with us. Thanks to everyone. And raise the glass and smile to your camera. Got it.
Awesome. Thank you. I hope you're feeling better, but soon.
Thank you. Everyone on my flight tomorrow, hope someone will be feeling better by tomorrow. Dan, were you in How I Met Your Mother? That's like a picture perfect smile right there.
Oh, right on. I get a decent amount of practice.
Oh man, the 8 is always a favorite of mine. It's so good.
Yeah. It's just brilliant.
I remember when it was $90. I do remember those days.
Yeah. Yeah. You could get it on a fairly regular basis at 90, 99, 99, things like that. Those days are sadly gone, but it was at that point, and I think it still is to a degree, a strong value for the age and quality of what it is that you get. But as you all know, that sub-segment, that 18 in the ballpark of 18-year age statement price point has gone somewhat insane. You may see, and I wouldn't place money on it, particularly with the threat of tariffs and things like that. But I think if you were to take that out of the equation, I think you would over the next couple of years see some fairly significant price stabilization based on the category being in decline. The potential tariff thing throws, of course, all the mathematics of that into a bit of a tailspin. But because of where we are in the at least the present downturn in consumption trends for the category, of course we're, as an industry, will respond to that as much and as best as we can, which I think, in general terms, at least in theory, ought to be to the benefit of the consumer. So that is my hope as an avid consumer of the category, in addition to working within it. I would like to see the consumer continue to be the beneficiary of a somewhat challenging set of market dynamics for us as it stands currently.
Sure. Yeah, I think every brand was laying down extra barrels during the
A
pandemic.
lot.
So
Yeah.
now
And new
that
distilleries opening and all those kinds of things, there's it could evolve into a bit of a problem.
just out of curiosity, since we're on the topic of me being selfish and hogging airtime, any Norway or Sweden exclusives for Glenmo that I could be seeking while I'm out there?
Ooh, let me ask. Not that I'm aware of, but we've done weirder stuff. I don't know if you recall seeing in the whiskey news, we did a version of Signet that we only released at the airport in South Korea. And that was the only place you could get it. And from what I hear, this is called Signet Ristretto. If you ever see a bottle of it, I hear it's extraordinary, but it wasn't on my travel schedule at the time, so I missed out on. There was the one place that because we're in cahoots with a French luxury company. At the same time as Signet Ristretto happened, we and our pals at Givenchy created a Signet-inspired version of Givenchy Gentleman that was also only for sale in Dubai.
I remember you mentioned that.
Because, of course.
Dubai makes sense, but like South Korea, I mean,
right.
I only had North Korea on my big bingo card, so
exactly. I'm still bummed that I haven't had a chance to even hold a bottle of Signet Ristretto.
And Ristretto extra tasty. It says 700 ml, but only comes in a 500 ml,
right? Probably. That tracks. Allegedly, what we did there was we focused more on the component of Signet that's based on the high roast chocolate malt mash bill. So that would normally be, X% of the melange that becomes Signet that would have played an outsized role in the vatting of Ristretto. And now you'll see. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, speaking of, last time we tasted the, God, what was the one you were saying? Wow, the word just left my mouth. Signet.
Signet, yeah, oh yeah.
Reserve coming out. Can you talk of why should we hunt it and what's so special about it?
That's going to be obviously the decision domain of the individual consumer. I'll tell you what we did and what we'll continue to do with Signet Reserve. Signet's a complicated whiskey to put together. It's a sort of an assemblage of 7 different component Glenmos that become this thing. And it was a concept. So Bill brought 2 concepts with him to Glenmorangie in 1995, and one of them became Signet. The idea that incorporating roasted barley into a malt whiskey mash bill could make something cool. And it took from 1995 to 2007 for that to become a bottled product. And so Signet has sat on its own in its own sort of rarefied air ever since. And so Bill decided, well, that might as well tinker with it. So what he's done with Signet Reserve is once the assembly process has happened, a chunk of that gets re-racked into PX cask, into first fill PX, and then put back in the warehouse for an undisclosed amount of time in Bill speak when it's ready, which I have no idea what that would be, but it's gonna be at least a somewhat significant period of time. And so the end result, still bottled at 46 ABV, is Signet Reserve. So distinctly PX influenced older version of what we would normally call Signet. I forgot to look at the chat. Did I miss any? No beer finishes. Done. No problem, Jeff. I think Bill would agree with you 1,000,000,000% on that. Pete is awesome. I'll give you that. I had to make the same promise to my wife. There is no more physical space in my home for whiskey. So, uh-oh.
You are no longer heard. Oh, we got the boom mic out. This is the portion of the tasting that's going to be ASMR. I hope you're all ready for this. We're going to listen to Daniel drink whiskey and give us tasting notes.
I love take your earbuds out and go silent.
There you go.
Yeah.
No worries. So, Vadim, I had to take an urgent phone call. Did I miss the photo?
Yes, you did.
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'll Photoshop you in.
It's okay.
Is NASA going to be okay? Do we lose any satellites or anything?
Yeah, well, we're still standing. Some of us are still standing at least. So I'm one of that. I'm one of the lucky few.
Good.
Nope, still can't hear you, Dan.
Take your time. No worries.
So,
Did everybody vote in the? We got 3 people outstanding. Did anybody not vote in the poll? Wow, I did not expect that outcome. Okay.
so that Signet Reserve sounds like it'll be interesting. It's even an older version of Signet, essentially. Yeah.
And with more
Right. And
PX. There you go.
hopefully I'm back.
Yeah.
Yes, that's precisely right. An older and PX sherry influenced version of Signet.
Oof. Sounds delicious. I was just looking back at our previous tastings, and gosh, we need to get you on here more often. We've had you on every other year. We need to do this every year.
Oh, right on. I'm in. I would love that. I think it'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
And we're up to some cool stuff in 2025. There'll be plenty of interesting things to talk about. We'll continue with the evolution of the core range. You've probably seen, and if you haven't, you will soon see that we're up to some interesting stuff with Nectar. Nectar D'Or will return to an age-stated whiskey with a 16-year age statement. The cask finish protocol will still include Sauterne, but it will also include Hungarian Royal Tokaj, Monbaziak, and Muscatel cask. So the new Signet, the new Nectar 16 is quite a compelling whiskey. You'll see that we'll be tinkering with La Santa as well next year, although that's not public knowledge just yet. And then, of course, what we're transitioning to with 18 into Infinita. Who knows what goes on after that? You may see some other things in the higher echelons of what we do core range wise. So obviously the introduction of Signet Reserve, next year's Tale of, which I have no idea. You'll see Cadwell 4 sometime, ideally soon. It's already in bottles and on a boat somewhere. So yeah, it's a very exciting year for us, 2025. And again, you'll see that we're, in terms of our advertising campaign, we're up to some crazy stuff. So I hope you enjoy it when you see it. And yeah, I'd love to be on again, or in person, or whatever it is that we can work out sometime in 2025.
So Dan, what is a good time in 2025 to catch you, right? What we would like, I'm speaking for everybody, and you guys can all tell me I'm full of it, but we would love to try the new stuff that's out for that year, and early enough that we can still find it on the shelves.
What we could do, we could construct a tasting out of what will be the new Lasanta, what will be the new Nectar, what will be the new Tail of, and what will be the new Cadball, in addition to a couple of other maybe interesting odds and ends that you might see. I mean, we could, in theory, if I could get, I don't know how we'd do it, but it'd be super fun to taste through some of the travel retail stuff. If we could get our hands on enough of it, that'd be a complete blast. And then, golly, who knows? Who the hell knows what we're up to in 2025? I think I have a sense of what we're doing, but there may be one other one-off that we could dial into that, and do something really cool with it. So yeah, I'd love to. And in terms of timing, it's pretty, right now it's wide open. We'll have our festival schedule, of course, that we'll have to deal with. We'll have I've got an ongoing set of things that I'll be doing with Drammers Club over the course of the end of this year and into next year. And then standard programming that we'll have to be sensitive to in terms of timing. But if we got you on the books soon enough, then I could always block it out and just tell everybody to go to hell. Not you, but on a company level.
Well, we appreciate that. Thanks so much. And I'm sure a lot of people have mentioned it in the chat and earlier. We appreciate you hooking us up with the swag as well. Everyone's gonna be
right on. Sure.
Glenmo branded for the foreseeable future. We're blown away by your generosity every time. So thank you.
Yeah, no, glad to get that out to folks that are, into the category and into the brand. That's the kind of thing, that's the kind of reciprocal value that we should provide, given your interest in the category, you're interested in being a part of this thing, and you're interested in the brand.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. You're kicking us off the holiday season in a really good way.
Nice.
I'm not a big gift giver for the holidays. It's just not me. Anyway, I love the cufflinks though, and I know exactly getting them this year. My brand new nephew, so I think he'll be thrilled. We'll see.
Awesome. Very nice. I love those cufflinks.
It's in his 20s, by the way, so Yeah.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
In the background, we voted for our favorite expression of the night. Dan, do you want to take what you think based on?
Ooh, that's a good question.
The group's favorite.
I'm gonna say Calvados. What the hell? I'm going for
it. Good guess. The winner is, by a long shot, actually, Tale of Tokyo.
Tokyo. Nice.
Yeah, almost 50% voted for Tale of Tokyo.
Very cool.
Second place, right behind Tale of Tokyo, is the classic 18-year-old.
Beautiful.
Very impressive. Calvados took third. My favorite was in fourth place, tied with Triple Cask, which Triple Cask got a vote. That's amazing. That's
very cool. I dig it. I like it a lot.
Whoever thought Triple Cask was their number one of the night is a very lucky person. Go stock up.
Right.
Well,
right.
How many people asked if we could, select all, right?
Oh, right. Or all.
Tough call.
Exactly. It is. It is. They all have their own uniquenesses about them, and I love them all for different reasons. To your point.
Yeah. They're fantastic.
Awesome. Thanks again. I really appreciate the opportunity, and your interest in the brand's honored to spend my evening with you. And Vadim knows how to get a hold of me across the board. I'm at GlenmoDan on Instagram. One of the things that I do try to do is to be available and responsive. So if you have not just questions, but if you've got feedback for us, the brand listens, honestly, even more than I realized. So glad to feed up any information, any feedback that you've got to our folks on the Whiskey Creation team. Very glad to try to answer any questions that you might have, as straight ahead or as geeky as you want to go. I'll do my very best to get you the information that you're looking for there, as in as timely a way as I can. So feel free, drop me a note whenever you'd like.
Thank you so much. Yeah, if you're not following Glenmo Dan, you're not really a whiskey drinker. Come on, get on there, give him a follow. This very serious gentleman in the button-up shirt, he runs around in a giraffe costume half the time. So
there's a lot of that.
For a good time. And his lovely better half is in half the video. So.
Yes, she's the reason to tune in. She's much more entertaining than I am.
Yeah. But yeah, Dan, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. And we look forward to having you back whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Thank you all. Have a pleasant evening. I appreciate you being here.
Cheers. Have a good night.